Welcome back, everybody. We're starting a little bit early today, about 5 minutes. We get set up every week early, but with technology and you've got your Windows upgrades or Zoom isn't working correctly, so you just never know if you're going to be on time. So you all know who I am. I'm Caroline Beste of the Tao of Horsemanship. Welcome back to Everything Horses and More podcast. To my left is my lovely co-host, Sabrina Arbogast.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, welcome back. So we've got some pretty exciting news. Today is August 26th, 2020. And starting next week, which will be Monday, August 31st, we are going to be doing our podcast 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays.
Amazing.
Yes, we are so excited. So that's a combination of everyone's feedback. You know, we've gotten tremendous downloads and interest, and it's also, we just have so much to talk about and share. And it's going to be a lot easier for our schedules too, if we just stick to 1 hour Monday, 1 hour Tuesday, 1 hour Wednesday, instead of trying to do 2 hours like we may do today. And yeah, there's just so much to share, you guys. So we're really excited. So today, we're going to introduce Everything Horses and More, since we kind of have a new structure. We are all about educating, liberating, and inspiring horse owners around the world. Join our live radio show and our revolution in horse care, handling, training, and achieve the life, relationship, and ride of your dreams. Every week, we bring you education, expert advice, and inspiration about horses, training, and living authentically. So for those of you that know me, you know what this is all about, what I'm all about. And for those of you that are new, everything is about a full circle for me in life and the way that I live my life and, so to speak, connecting the dots. So when I say living authentically, how does that relate to horses? To me, it absolutely does relate to horses, especially in the way that we work with horses, AKA train horses. So if anyone's wondering why I say revolution, well, I think this podcast especially is going to dive in even deeper today and show you guys more clearly why we are a revolution, the Tao of Horsemanship, why Caroline Beste, is about the revolution in the way that we talk about horses, the way that we care for horses, the way that we handle horses, especially the way that we train horses. Every week during our podcast, we spend time diving in deep, talking about complex areas in horsemanship, such as horse psychology, biological behavior and nurture, the real secrets to being safe with horses, and how to achieve the best relationship and ride of your dreams with your horse. If y'all are wondering what we're doing with the spray bottle, we have 2 new kittens here. I adopted 2 new beautiful kittens, and they've woken up from their nap. So they're running around attacking everything, including us. So they get a little spray here and there. So, and that's not all. We also get real and honest about our personal lives and experiences, sharing what's worked and what hasn't about everything related to horses and more. Weekly podcasts are streamed live. Right now, it's been every Wednesday, but starting next week, August 31st, they're going to be Monday through Wednesday, 3 days, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, USA. And they will be streamed live to our Tao of Horsemanship Facebook page. So I hope you all can join us every week for our revolution in horse care, handling, training, and living. Okay. So today's topic, this particular topic has been circulating, so to speak. I have definitely isn't the right word. I have been talking about this for years. And I think in several of our earlier podcasts, I don't know how far back now all of our podcasts are archived every week to our YouTube channel. So we can spread the word and share in a larger audience. But I've been talking about connection and social engagement with horses and relationship and how important it is. And now just recently, I've been really diving into the science behind it. And it's really important because I think it helps me, well, I know it helps me better articulate and break it down so that I can, again, better articulate and share what I know. So it makes more sense, it's more easily understood. And again, there's just a lot of professional equine leaders, trainers out there between their YouTube videos and their online courses. They're all wrapping themselves around the language and doing their best to interpret as well as teach their interpretation or their perception of what this all means. So today's topic is how we connect, or why connection is so important to horses and humans, the science and emotions behind connection. So for those of you that have been following me for the last 15 years, not on podcasts, of course, but you've been students of mine, you all have heard, I mean, connection and communication has been my two key words the entire time that I've been around. And so now it's just becoming more of a buzzword, so to speak, for the lack of a better word. And it's becoming more popular. And we're just going to wrap our brains around it a little bit. We're going to define it a little bit more today. Before we get into the topic, I also want to review last week. As you know, each week we are putting a snippet of our full-length free training video. It's a snippet training video on YouTube, but it's a snippet of our full-length video that we are adding to our beginner rider series, which we're going to release hopefully sometime in October. And so last week we had what to do when you mount your horse, not just how to mount. Oh no, that's this week's. Sorry, last week was how to mount, excuse me. So last week was the best ways to mount your horse, common mistakes beginner riders make. And so I presented in my video how to mount in a dressage saddle from the ground, from a mounting block, and how to mount bareback. And I did not bring a Western saddle. I did not use a Western saddle because, you know, stirrup is a stirrup. The most important thing was giving you guys an idea of, and a little bit more compassion, consideration for your horse when you are mounting, and how to help yourself mount without pulling on your horse, so to speak, or pulling on the saddle. And I think the most important area, this is one that seemed, you know, no one's teaching it like this for the most part. And so when my students have come to me over the years, they're baffled when I say, grab the mane, you know, grab the mane in the rein, and then put at least 75% of your weight on the horse's wither area when you go to mount, whether it's getting on bareback or pulling yourself up. And if you position your horse's legs and you get them ready for the mounting from the ground specifically, it's so much easier when they are steadied, so to speak, with their weight in their front legs. And then you are using correct balance with your body, the foot in the stirrup, and then using predominantly their mane and their wither area and the heaviest part of their body to help leverage you and support you as you get on, versus using a saddle, which rubs their back and often moves and shifts. And it's very irritating and very dangerous. So that was last week. And then our topic last week was an extension. It was a part 2 series of how does a horse's emotions relate to horse behavior and health, and how well do you know your horse, nature versus nurture. We also had a special guest. No, that wasn't last week, was it? Rebecca, yes. Was it? It was Rebecca. We had a special guest, Rebecca, student of ours, and we added another topic to our podcast, and it was about death, letting go, and living. So I hope you guys check that out. We now offer them on our YouTube channel, Caroline Best or Dow of Horsemanship. We're archiving all of them in a playlist. So we are no longer storing them on Facebook because it just takes up too much data. And living out rurally in the country, I have a hard enough time with my internet via satellite as it is. So it's just consumes so much data when we keep all of these videos on our Facebook pages. So we've just been storing them, recording them, obviously, and storing them or archiving them. Okay, fantastic. The last thing I want to cover before we dive in deep with our big discussion today is this week's free snippet training video on YouTube, and it's going to be what to do when you mount your horse. So many people just get on and go, and then they create that go in their horse. And so the horse is anticipating, always thinking, and it's even bigger than that. The big picture is if that's the way you start your ride, I don't care if you're in a lesson or trail riding, then you're creating that pattern of recognition for your horse or that habit. And it creates a lot of stress and it creates a lot of rushing. And so horses, it just goes against how they're hardwired, you guys. You know, I know horses can get up and go. Okay, they all have that instinctual self-preservation mode of flight. They can all get up and go in a nanosecond, but they are not instinctively hardwired to do that. They are instinctively hardwired to conserve energy and be lazy and go slow and be thoughtful and tune in to their senses so that they can tune into their environment. So when we just create this get up and go all the time, it's even in our training, it's just pushing these horses way past their comfort. And so that's why we end up with so many displaced behaviors. And most of our self-preservation modes end up reflecting the freeze mode, you know, the shutting down, the catatonic mode eventually. Or you just create a hypervigilant horse, one or the other. So in this week, last week, we talked about all the best ways to mount your horse, how to mount your horse. In this Friday's video, we talk about what to do when you mount your horse, part 1. And this is where I talk about you, the rider, when you first get on your body scan. And then the following week, next week, we'll introduce part 2, which is going to be now, how do you check your horse before you ride off? Because there's a lot to do, you guys. There's a lot to check with you as a rider so that you become more practiced in your self-awareness as a rider. That's why we do it at the mounting block and at the halt. And the more you do this, the more ingrained, the more habitual it becomes, a pattern of recognition, so that this will more naturally occur while you're riding when something isn't going right. And then we have the pre-flight for riding with our horses. That'll be part 2 next Friday. And what do you do to check your horse? Check their mind, most specifically. Are they connected to you? Are they with you? All the full-length videos will be in our new series, and the snippets will be on our YouTube channel. Okay, as you all know or don't know, Sabrina is not just a willing participant in these podcasts. I've got her chained to the chair. She's here to take questions and comments. So I can't say it enough, you guys. This is your time, you know, interrupt us, so to speak. You can always come back and watch this at another time. Not to, you know, of course, these podcasts are also not just now the visual recorded and archived on YouTube. The audio is easily accessible with your podcast app on your phone. Yes. So you can listen to this anytime. So just don't hesitate to ask a question, even if it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And there are no bad, wrong, or stupid questions. I can't stand when people, I can't. It's like, this might be a stupid question. It's like, it's never a stupid question. Are you kidding me? Ever.
It's a great opportunity.
It is a great opportunity. Okay, so why connection is so important to horses and humans, or how we connect. The science and emotions behind connection. I can't wait, by the way, till we get, I just ordered a bunch of new equipment, you guys. So I won't be holding this thing anymore. Can't wait. All right. I am going to be reading primarily because I want to stay on track. You guys are familiar with me. I can go off track very easily. So I'm going to be really diving deep and do my best today to connect the dots between training horses traditionally and training horses unconventionally, which is what I'm all about. And when I say unconventionally, it's specifically on this topic through relationship and connection. I'll save it. Okay, first, let us begin with a few terms so we can familiarize ourselves with today's current buzzwords in horse training and the newer use of the language. So I don't know about you guys. I often tell you in my podcast, I'm always writing and researching and reading. And part of that always leads me to my competition, so to speak. What are the other leading equine professionals doing out there? So I want to stay open to what other people are producing and how they're going about it. What are they saying? How are they teaching it? And I have been in the forefront, so to speak. I've been one of the leaders in this particular conversation, maybe not the science, that's why I'm going to bring the science behind it, but definitely in the emotional understanding, the importance of connection and relationship. I mean, that's just my whole training methodology is based on this. And so today is really going to break it down for us, make it more tangible, more understandable. And I want to bring up traditional training. I want to compare and contrast it to the more unconventional training methods out there, with mine being the most unconventional and the most, to me, the safest way to work with horses. And I'll explain why. I often do when I'm talking about this particular subject on connection and relationship with horses. So we often hear today about the following in horse training, behavior, and psychology. So I'm going to first talk about the more traditional conventional theories and common practices first, the ones we are more familiar with and constantly being bombarded with. Then I will talk about the not so common theories and practices. And we're going to compare and contrast as far as why certain things work better for the horse. Maybe not for us because it takes more time, more education, and more patience, but definitely is better for the horse. And I'm going to really simplify it, actually. I'm going to do a good job. It's taken me a little while, but we're going to get there. So traditional conventional theories and practices often taught in horse training involve the following language: science-based training, or behavioral science, which includes treat rewards as positive reinforcement. That's big now. It's a big topic. We covered that a few weeks ago. Target or clicker training. It's another big one, especially with Mustangs. I'm seeing that it's been around for a few years, more remotely, but now it's, with YouTube, we're all seeing each other's videos. So it's just becoming more common to train. And again, all the target and clicker training is always with treats. And for me, what frustrates me when I see equine professionals out there selling their training method using target or clicker training or even positive reinforcement, they're always using treats. And I can't say enough about why you don't need to use treats with horses. I can't say enough about why you don't and why you shouldn't. Now, I give my horses treats all the time: apples, carrots, grapes, oranges, real food, not chemical or manufactured. I don't do that anymore. And I try to stick away from real sugar like I used to give them, even though we know grapes and oranges and carrots have sugar and apples. But I still give them that, and they get it anytime, but they never get it when we have intense learning together, because they don't need that. And to me, when you start looking at all of these, and we're being flooded with all this target or clicker training, it's all treat reinforcement. And they're using the treats as positive. And they're not only undermining the ability of the horse to learn and learn very well, they're undermining the importance to the horse, the relationship, the social engagement, because the horse gets so fixated. I don't care what you say or how you say it. Well, it's how you train your horse to take the treats. Yes, that's absolutely part of it and appropriate. But your horse is still thinking, and they're food driven, and it undermines the intelligence of horses. And there still is a lack of really good quality research out there that is going to support what I'm going to say today. I'm going to be able to pull on some of the research, but there is still such a lack of good evidence-based research. Everything out there is so scientifically proven, and there isn't enough data out there through basically just pattern recognition. Let's say I had the time and the resources to film 7 days a week here or 5 days a week here, all my interactions with my horses, both in training and just in daily socializing, how I socialize with them. You would see, or I would definitely be able to help you see strong patterns. And those patterns are never around food. My horses leave their food for bonding moments. They leave it. And food is not, as it's purported out there, the number one hierarchy for a prey animal. It's not. For predator, yes. So without getting into that any deeper, to me, these more traditional, conventional methods of training, you're using targets or using clickers or using treats to help train a horse, is not only selling yourself short, it's not going to keep you safe. And while the horse will learn through habituation and conditioning, you're still not getting to the core of what makes it so amazing to be with horses, connect with horses, understand, feel like you have this mutual understanding with your horse, let alone work with horses. You're just selling it short. I do understand, as a professional out there selling my stuff and promoting it and marketing it, I do understand it's kind of a quick fix, and it definitely is a better way for horses compared to what I'm going to talk about next, the real traditional types of training. It's definitely better than that. So I brought up the science-based and the target and clicker training because while we're moving slowly, but we are steadily moving away from the real traditional methods of horse training, which had so much to do with dominance and force versus gentle heart-based training approaches. You know, dominance and force training was the leader. And even if the trainer's application of dominance and force was a little more gentle, so to speak, and I'll use an example with Monty Roberts. For those of you that don't know, you're going to know today. I can't stand his method, and his join up is a joke. So he basically uses the principles of his join up, so to speak, with horses is based upon exhausting the horse. So basically, and this isn't my interpretation. If you go back to his older videos or any of his older writings, he talks about studying wild horses, and that basically the wild horse in general could only outrun its predator a quarter of a mile. It could only use up that much energy up to a quarter of a mile, and then it was depleted. And so he used that in his basic join up in the round pen, so to speak. He used the tactics of pressure and release. And so you've got dominance and force training. You've still got desensitizing and flooding and sacking out. And then you've got your operant conditioning, or a method of learning or teaching the horse that employs rewards and punishments for behavior. Basically, another way of describing pressure and release. So you still have these traditional methods being used, and they're being used by older professionals, my age and older. And because my age, you know, I got back into horses much later in life, in my late 30s, really, you could say 40. And the trainers, the general horsemanship and the trainers that I was interested in that weren't just natural horsemanship, they were 10 to 20 years older than me. So they were already well into their craft. And even if they have a gentle heart and they touch the horse gently and they love the horse, a lot of these guys and gals were still using operant conditioning, pressure and release, desensitizing, flooding, sacking out, and a level of dominance and force training. So those are the traditional, the real hardcore traditional areas of horsemanship. And now today, you've got a lot of these up and coming newbies in their 20s or 30s and equine professionals, they're calling themselves. And they're now taking the old school of operant, desensitizing, flooding, sacking out, dominance, pressure, and release. They're taking that and putting their own twist on it. And because there is more science-based research about horses, there's more today, they're picking and pulling what supports what they're doing. And that's where the science-based training or behavioral science comes in, or they're AKA former dog trainers, and they're now training horses like dogs. I can't stand it. And that's where the target, in my opinion, and the clicker training starts coming in. And so I get that target and clicker training is not about dominance and force training. I get that. I understand. But I don't like it. I don't like it. And again, it does the horse a huge disservice, and it does you a huge disservice when it comes to really everything, getting to know your horse, learn your horse, read your horse, learn how to work with your horse, and to motivate and stimulate the learning process. You're missing it. I think, I can't remember which podcast where we were talking about the science-based, it was a science-based training or behavioral science podcast where I was talking about nurturing and how important nurturing is to social species, and whether it's humans or horses, to mammals. You know, it's so important when we are nurtured, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. It stimulates, we're going to really get into the science. It stimulates the learning through the connection, through the engagement. So here I'm going to bring up some of the newer methodologies, newer approaches to horse training, and one of them being science of connection, or the Polyvagal Theory with horses. I think Warwick Schiller, I brought him up last week, did a phenomenal job introducing, this is his topic actually on YouTube, science of connection or polyvagal theory with horses. And I have mentioned it last week, a lot of respect for him. I don't have a lot of respect for a lot of horse trainers out there. Very, very, very few. He's so evolved. He's always been a great trainer and a good guy, and I've kept my eye on him for a long time, but he's really evolved, and you start to see it in the science of connection video of his. We also, this has been around for a while, and I certainly have been bringing it up for a long time, social and emotional intelligence and sentience in horses. Linda Kahanov, how many of you are familiar with Linda Kahanov's books and the Tao of Equus? So she really brought that. She was a leading expert, you know, guiding us, and when she wrote about social and emotional intelligence, sentience in horses. And this is the ability to experience, sentience is the ability to experience feelings through the senses or sensory processing. And so horses are obviously sentient beings because they absolutely experience life, how they feel about everything, specifically through their senses. Their right brain, more than their left brain, their cognitive. They don't think about it and rationalize it at all like we do. They don't have the capability to do that. So the horse is truly a sentient being. And then we're going to talk a little bit more in this podcast about social and emotional intelligence and how that shows up and what does it mean. So what about the words? Here's some unconventional buzzwords or not unconventional buzzwords. Here's some buzzwords that relate to some of the more, not mainstream, but the unconventional practices and methods in horse training that are becoming more and more, what's the word? More and more, we're becoming more aware of them. They're becoming more, not popular. They're just starting to get out there. But attuned or attunement, they're similar, but very different. I've been using these words forever. So to attune means to bring into harmony. Makes sense. You tune. You want to tune your instrument. Attune it. Tune your instrument. You want to tune in. So it also means to make aware or responsive. And that certainly is what we want to become. And we want our horses to become very responsive and aware. And we want to become more aware. So attunement is more of a spiritual practice or healing modality offered through the hands. So attunement comes from being attuned or attune, but it's become more of a spiritual modality or practice, healing modality. So now we're getting into the buzzwords that we're starting to hear more of with horsemanship and horse training: social connection and social engagement. I've been saying for years how important it is for horses to socialize, and not just with each other and being a, they're predisposed or hardwired. It's instinctive in them to seek out, to socialize, but also how important it is on a deeper level socially to feel like they belong. They belong to us, they belong with us, that we've claimed them in our heart. And we're going to talk about the science behind that today. So social connection and social engagement, where relating to others socially or intimately helps us produce feel-good hormones and overall well-being. And like I mentioned in previous podcasts about nurturing and how important nurturing is, and what does nurturing mean to us, to a social species, an emotionally and socially intelligent species? Well, it has a lot to do with intimacy and relationship, and it has a lot to do with being there, being present. And a good example for humans would be when we're babies and we're born and we're so absolutely like we can't do anything for ourselves. We are completely dependent on our mothers and fathers to take care of us, and for a long time. It's very different than horses. As soon as a horse is born, they have certain faculties, certain senses, like suckling and getting up and their legs working within a few hours. I mean, they are ready to rock and roll, and that's part of how they survive. So they're very different. We are totally dependent, and they become pretty independent in a way. And part of, as a baby, as a human baby, that nurturing is so important to stimulating cognitive development. And I talked a lot about that in that previous podcast. So it's the cognitive development. And today we're going to talk more about the emotional development, which contributes to cognitive. But we're specifically going to be talking more about an overall well-being. And this is going to be pretty interesting. You're going to see how it's going to come back full circle. And then the last buzzword, so to speak, and I've been using this for years, it's been around for years, but it's becoming more prevalent in the newer 20 and 30-year-old equine professionals out there, whether they're on YouTube or podcasting or even developing their own courses, is somatic. I use this word all the time because somatic experience is really about body sensations, meaning the way the body experiences feelings, how they show up in the body. And this is really important. This is all going to connect the dots as we go down into the science behind all of this, and then how it shows up in the work and how it shows up in our horses. So do we have any questions from anybody? Oh, I've got a cat hair in my eye. I apologize.
Lydia Kading.
Hi, Lydia.
My Mustang is 14, taken at age 9 months. Do you think he was clicker trained?
So slow down. So Lydia's Mustang is 14 years old.
Taken at age 9 months. Do you think he was clicker trained?
Well, I don't know. How would I know, Lydia? I mean, your baby was, Lydia's a student of mine. Yeah. Your baby, your Mustang's 14, was taken from the wild at 9 months of age. Most of the time, the BLMs, Mustangs, I mean, they live in horrible habitats. They are confined in, you know, dry paddocks for years until they're sold, till somebody comes and gets them. So I have no idea how long. My question to Lydia, Sabrina, is how long have you had your Mustang? Since 9, did I get that right? Since 9 months of age? So
he was taken at age 9 months.
Okay.
So I don't know if she's had him.
So first question for Lydia is, how long have you had your Mustang? And second is, what makes you think he was clicker trained?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, what makes clicker training? And you wouldn't know unless you use a clicker, because so many horses are treat trained. People approach them and work on wild horses, getting to know them through food. So, yep. Okay. So I'll wait to hear back from Lydia.
You have another one?
Yes, another one.
Mel Davis. And are the clicker and target training enthusiasts really getting to know horse behavior through studying wild horses, or just relying on trying to get the desired behavior without knowing real horse behavior?
That's a great, I would say, comment/question, and that is from
Mel Davis.
Mel. So Mel, you're spot on. So with you're spot on. You said it really well. So clicker training, target training, anything with treats, no, there's no way you really get to know the horse. And you are absolutely molding behavior, desired behavior. Yes, I've read so many articles and seen videos where both clicker and target can help with horses that are afraid of things. And that's basically because you are using the food reward plus the focus with the target more than clicker. You're using that, let's just say the food reward, to create a positive association with something that they're scared of. So, but then with the target, you're redirecting the focus and then positively reinforcing it with the food. But you're not, it's, again, these are all Band-Aids. You know, you're just putting a Band-Aid over a symptom to a deeper cause, or you're avoiding, to me, real development. And that's one of the things I want to bring up today is language too. And I do in my courses, especially the spirituality course, that's a standalone course, and in my mastery membership, we talk a lot about language and intention, and how you use language, and why we choose certain words. And so real quick, and I'm losing my train of thought. I've done so much reading and writing this week. I apologize. My brain's a little bit exhausted. It's like, how do I want to put it with target and food rewards in training? I don't even want to use the word training anymore. I don't want to even use the word training. More and more, we're getting away from it in our videos and my writing. I don't want to train my horse to act a certain way. And that's what's going on when we are doing that level, that type of positive reinforcement, where it's food oriented, it's target training, it's clicker training. We are conditioning a behavior. So no, we're not getting to know our horses, and we're not allowing them to show up how they truly are. And we're training. What about developing? I say this all the time. I want to develop myself with my horse. I want to learn how to work with my horse, And it doesn't mean that each of the horses that I work with or I'm developing with doesn't learn the same exercises or the same curriculum, because they all do. Because to me, what I have developed as my curriculum creates an amazingly well-adjusted horse in every aspect. So I want to develop with them. That's the key here. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent. I think Mel did a great job. You pretty much stamped that. You get it. They're not getting to know their horse. And it just keeps bringing me back to the word training. What are we training? We're training behavior. That's all you see out there. We're training behavior. And again, I don't want to be learning from a 20-something-year-old equine professional. They have nothing to give you because they don't have experience. And horse training takes experience. And let me tell you why. Not experience through years. It does. But you could be around horses for 20 years like I was before I got back into horses. And I didn't know that I didn't know so much. So it's not about how long you've been with horses. It's how many horses you've successfully worked with. And I don't just mean you took a horse for a month and you helped one problem, because it is never that easy or simple. It means every horse has been restarted or started and finished. And finished is you can walk, trot, and canter on a loose rein. Horse is listening to you. They're connected to you. The movement is collected. And again, you are connected. And hopefully trail riding. That's really and by yourself as well as with other people. To me, that's a finished horse. And I'm not the only one. The great masters, everybody that's either passed away or in their 80s and 90s in horsemanship is going to tell you what makes a well-rounded horse. And it doesn't happen in 30 days. It doesn't happen in 90 days. For the most part, you can create a lot in 90 days. It happens when you develop a foundation with your horse. There's no other way around it. There's no other way around it. You can't cheat by target training. You can't, because shit's going to happen. There's no real safety with target training. What's going to happen when there isn't a target or you get triggered and you're not where you need to be for your horse to rely on you to feel safe and comfortable, and your horse gets triggered? And clicker's only going to get you so far. So emotional connection is when we engage with another through a somatic experience that is both positive and intimate. Somatic is experiencing through our sensory aware, through our body. Emotional connection is also similar to socializing or social engagement. These ways of connecting to others intimately is number one in the language of horses, meaning it is most important to a horse's emotional and mental well-being. And we're going to continue to talk more about this in this podcast, because it's important. I really need to, as a leader in this way of working with horses and understanding them and presenting a foundational program, a training method that can accomplish all of this. It's really important that I keep pushing out there and getting out there and spreading the word, because there's so many knockoffs. You know, all this other stuff is just an easy, quick way, a knockoff. You're either getting some young 20, 30 something trying to tell you that they have enough experience with thousands of horses and students, and they've developed horses from start to finish. Hell no, there's no way. There's no way you can do it with quality by the time you're in your 30s. There's no way. So you're getting shortchanged there. And again, they're just knockoffs. And then again, I know marketing and advertising. That was my other career. And I'm still doing it for this business. And people are stealing language all the time. There's a lot of talkers out there and very few actual doers. And you need to, as a student, as a horse lover, horse owner, as a student of the horse, you've got to educate yourself. You've got to compare and contrast. I keep telling everybody this in the podcast. You've got to take the time to look at other different trainers and compare and contrast and educate, train your eye to what you're looking at, not just what you're reading and what they're telling you that makes you feel good, but what you actually see. What is the real difference? So when I'm talking about how important emotional connection is and social engagement and relationship, it's not just because I feel that way. It's not my opinion. It's because it's real to horses. It's the number one thing that matters most to them. And when you look at the science, like I'm going to be breaking down, and you look at some of our previous podcasts where we've talked, it's very complex. We've talked all about, like I said, nurturing and how important nurturing is, emotional nurturing, whether it's with human babies or young, the mother horse, the bonding is so important. How many of our baby horses are screwed up because they don't get healthy mama horses bonding with them because they're screwed up or they're taken away from their mama too young? Bonding is so important to cognitive development, to socialization, to us and the horses feeling good about ourselves, feeling good about our environment, which creates well-being and ease. And most importantly, when you want to train your horse, develop them, learn together, work, you both have to have an open learning frame of mind. You've got to be open to learning. That means you've got to be confident. You've got to feel good about it. I mean, here's the common sense behind all of this. How many of you are just being told to push, to look for the end result, the goal? What's happening during the process of this is most important. If you don't learn to step back, slow down, become more engaged yourself with your horse during the process of learning and doing, you're going to miss everything. And then you create, here we go, the science-based or behavioral science with training. It's mechanical. You create robots in your horses. You will continue to have accidents with your horses. Always. There's no real safety. Bit pulling on your horse, yanking them around, rubbernecking them is only going to get you so far. So I'll explain later scientifically the why and the how. But first, let's explore this topic a little bit more. I think it's safe to say that we all understand how important it is for horses to be in a herd dynamic, to be social. We've read about it. That's a standard understanding, don't you think, Sabrina?
Oh.
We get it. On a basic level, wild herds of horses feel safe in numbers, and there's a much deeper reason for this. It's not just safety in the numbers. It's also scientifically proven why, and we're just starting to explore this scientifically. I've talked about it in previous podcasts about the electrical current that travels through horses as a herd. This is real, it's scientifically proven. And that electrical current is basically part of the nervous system, which we're going to start talking about more in depth today. So that's real. Not to mention, as a herd, you can put the babies in the middle, and like a wagon wheel, all the adults stay on the outside and keep the young, vulnerable babies on the inside. So there is, on a very basic level, there's the truth why horses wild horses, especially babies, want to travel in large numbers, because it's safer. But it's also about community. I say this all the time. It's also about social engagement and how rewarding and fulfilling it is for horses. And that it actually produces it's better brain development cognitively. As I just said, when you feel good about your social engagements, it fills you with confidence. You're an open learner. Yeah, you're not worried, you're not stressed out. I mean, there's so much common sense to this. And this is about horses. This isn't just about people. So positive and intimate experiences affect our heart rate by calming it and lowering it. They also create our positive associations and control our endorphin release, the hormone that is responsible for feeling good and feeling relaxed. So here's the science behind why it's so important. Social engagement, socialization, being able to connect to others intimately and then in groups is so important to horses. Let's take a look at more of the science and how our bodies are affected by our emotional experiences when we are connecting, when we are engaged intimately or as a group. So how we feel about a situation is a result of our ventral vagus nerve that is stimulated and engaged by the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the science that I'm going to be talking about is for horses and humans. So what is the nervous system? And why? Why is the nervous system important? This is wicked important for horses, especially because they live in their right hemisphere of their brain predominantly, which is associated or attached to sensory aware and sensory processing. So the horses, as I've talked many times, are cognitive side of their brain, their left hemisphere. Both sides are attached by the corpus callosum, just like ours is. Their brains are much smaller in comparison to their body than ours, obviously. But for the horse, their left is just not as developed. We can develop it though. Through my work, we can develop the relationship, the trust, the feeling safe and secure, belonging to each other with your horse, which is what creates safety. Oh, you have no idea. This is what I talk about considering, when a horse considers you as one of their own. And while you're developing this deeper level of relationship and bonding, you're also, through my work, developing the left brain of the horse. I'm developing you so that you can speak the language of effortless, but I'm also developing the horse to balance out their brain, develop their brain, their cognitive ability. So they're better thinkers and not reactors. So what is the nervous system? A basic model of the nervous system shows that we have two components of our nervous system. One that is under our conscious control, like moving our hand, and another that functions without awareness, regulating our body temperature, for example. The portion of the nervous system that functions without our conscious awareness is called the autonomic nervous system, ANS, the autonomic nervous system. So this is where we're consciously unaware. And it makes sense if you just look at the words autonomic. It's on auto. All of our emotional expressions are mediated by the autonomic nervous system, as it's either mobilizing energy through our sympathetic nervous system or conserves energy through our parasympathetic nervous system. Pay attention, because a horse is totally relates on these levels. So our sympathetic nervous system conserves energy. We're gonna dive into that a little bit more here. And our parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite. That's where we're going to need to mobilize energy. So the sympathetic nervous system is associated with fight or flight response and the release of cortisol, which is a stress chemical, or adrenaline. Oh, sorry, I got those mixed up. So the sympathetic nervous system does not conserve energy. Sympathetic is fight or flight. So sorry about that. And it's responsible for releasing cortisol or adrenaline, our stress chemicals, throughout the bloodstream. This system is about mobilization though. And you'll see why. Mobilize. You're like, mobilize. All right. The parasympathetic is associated with relaxation, digestion, and regeneration. This system is often referred to as the rest and digest, or immobilization. Also called the freeze or shock state or catatonic state. This is where you have a low heart rate, low metabolism. So how many of our horses go into the self-preservation mode of fight and flight or freeze, where they completely shut down and check out? So now you're getting to understand how the nervous system is affected, or how the nervous system affects our actions. So the dorsal vagus is also part of the system and is responsible for shutting down, preserving life. I'm not going to get into any more than what we're talking about right now, because this gets really complicated, breaking down all of these systems related to our nervous system. But we do need to talk about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are meant to work in a rhythmic alternation that supports healthy digestion, sleep, and immune system functioning. So now we're going to talk about the vagus nerve, and why. You guys are going to understand when I get into it, because this is how we're going to closely break down or relate the science of what I started out talking about with horses, the social engagement, the connection. Why? What's the science behind all that with horses? Well, it's associated with the nervous system, that now we're breaking it down and diving in deeper through the vagus nerve, which will then lead us to the polyvagal theory. So the vagus nerve is our parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is part of our autonomic nervous system. So you have the autonomic, then the parasympathetic. The autonomic nervous system is a control system that acts largely unconsciously and regulates bodily functions, such as heart rate, digestion, respiratory, urination, yada, yada, yada. This system is the primary mechanism in control of the flight or fight response. So with horsemanship, now this is where I'm going to be connecting the dots. Horses are, as we know, and we're even diving in deeper and getting to know more about, they basically respond to their environment through their innate instinctive self-preservation modes, right? Because everything is taken into the right brain. Everything's taken in through their senses and sensory processing. And so what's amazing when you understand this, how I'm breaking it down, you need to understand the science, is that you can actually, again, we're talking about the right side of the horse's brain. When we start developing, as I call it, brain games, strengthening the cognitive side of the horse's left brain, and in conjunction with developing really deep bonds and connection and engagement with our horses, we can override their self-preservation modes. Believe it or not, this is part of the deep, complex work I do with rehabilitation, PTSD, and trauma with horses. We're going to touch on it lightly today and expand much more next week. So both the parasympathetic nervous system and autonomic nervous system are part of the peripheral nervous system. Don't worry, I won't get much deeper than this. The peripheral nervous system's function is to connect the central nervous system to the limbs and organs, essentially serving as a relay between the brain and spinal cord and the rest of the body. The connection between the central nervous system and organs allows a system to be in two different functional states, sympathetic and parasympathetic. All of these nervous systems are referred to as our slowing down nervous system, or as some have called it, the rest and digest system. While these nervous systems are integral to our physical health, residing in one area or system or staying in one or several for long periods of time is very damaging. As I always say, extreme behavior is not only unhealthy, it causes emotional, mental, and physical imbalances within, thus affecting our quality of life, our choices, and our well-being. So what that paragraph specifically is talking about is if a horse or person is either shut down all the time or in hypervigilance, fight or flight, you're doing tremendous damage to your nervous system. Not to mention your emotional, mental, and physical states of being. So I hope I'm doing a full circle here. And it's a very complicated subject matter.
Yes.
And I'm keep trying to pull it back to common sense and practical applications. So let's now introduce the 3 basic neural circuits for regulation and function. Immobilization equals freeze. Mobilization is energy to move. You have your fight or flight. Social engagement or social connection is how we as mammals communicate, connect, and engage. So why I brought those 3 up is just to hopefully summarize a little bit about, we're talking about the nervous system in general and a little more specifically, and we're talking about how as mammals, we and the horses, we share the same type of nervous system. And in my study and written articles on PTSD and the way that the brain reacts in the equine with trauma, we also release the same level of hormone when we are in a state of fight, flight, or freeze. So how does this connect to trauma? Let me explain. When we have trauma, it's stored or trapped inside of us, inside of our physiology, our bodily functions. This is the same for people and horses. Inside our organs, our tissues, and internal energy system, referred to as our chakra system. So trauma shows up in one of 2 ways. Sympathetic, meaning hypervigilant behavior, fight or flight response, or parasympathetic, the freeze response. So now we're jumping into trauma. And how did trauma, you might be asking, how does trauma, why am I bringing that up when we were talking about social engagement and connection and the science and emotions behind it? Because as I always say, with horses especially, 99% of our domesticated horses are messed up, fucked up because of us. We are their influencers. Whether we take them away from their mama horses who are screwed up, so they're learning, horses are great at learning from others. Take them away from their mamas way too soon. They're thrown in with otherly, socially, messed up, displaced horses. And look at the types of training we do. Where did all this dominance horse training come from? It came from one, this is me, I think man's ego, number 1, man's ego. Number 2, our linear predatorial mindsets that are just so strongly instinctive in us. So you have ego, you have the predatory mindset. And then 3rd, it's possibly a lack of education. 4th, a lack of patience and time dedicated to evolving with your horse, evolving in a relationship, taking the time to develop with this complex being, our horse. And 5th, our horses are so messed up because somewhere along the line, somebody came out with this dominance theory about horses, this stupid dominance theory, because of their lack of education and their personal interpretation studying horses, that you have an alpha, you have dominance. And you do have alpha personalities. You do have dominant personalities. You have submissive and passive. But horses as a species in general do not engage through dominance. But if you're studying domesticated horses, then you're studying fucked up horses most of the time who are not socialized. They don't know how to socialize. So as I always say, you got to study wild horses, and you got to also bring up young baby horses. You do. You've got to imprint them from birth, or create an environment where you're educated enough to start breeding some horses and developing them as babies naturally, which means there isn't a lot of training. And then you really get to see the truth of horses and how easy developing horses is, how fucking easy it is. You just show them the way, a little bit of encouragement and not treats. You show them a way. You show them the way. Through consistency and repetition, you create patterns. You create healthy associations. And positive reinforcement. You create, which is all verbal and bonding, touching and rubbing. Why verbal? Because it resonates. Here's part of that nervous system I'm going to come back to later. Because how you choose your words and how you say them, the tonal quality, the horse can feel it, just like you can feel me when you listen to me. You can feel my rage, my frustration, my passion, my love. They can too. So while I'm getting into all the science, I'm also trying to really make this, to simplify this. So that's why I'm bringing up trauma. But I'm gonna simplify it even more. Don't worry. So how do we heal from trapped emotions and trauma? How do we heal? How do the horses? We begin through connection and social engagement. See, I'm going to get pissed off again talking about this, and I'll want to cry and I'll want to throw something. So here's our AKA horse training out there. We're still using desensitizing to a fault. We're still flooding our horses without realizing it. We're still using a ton of pressure and stupid release to teach. And we're still using a lot of dominance and force. And we're being taught that that's how we deal with unwanted behavior. That's how we create new behaviors. And that's how we handle horses that are spooky and messed up. And it's not. It might be a little piece, not dominance or force, but a little healthy, organic desensitizing, healthy, natural, organic. You have to look up what the word means, guys. The definition of desensitizing is when you are engaging in that scary experience on a low level, a level that's comfortable for you, and often. Same should be for the horse. So if my horse had a problem or an issue, and they don't, with introducing the saddle or reintroducing the saddle to them. I've never had a bucking horse, ever. Even the wild ones that I've trained, I've developed. Never. Well, one time, that's a whole other story. But I was learning big time too. But after that, never. Never. It shouldn't be like that. But what do most people do? Horse has an adverse reaction to one of your pieces of equipment, or they're at the trainer. They shouldn't be bucking. They're bucking because they're petrified. That's what they're supposed to do. It's like a freaking tiger or cat on their back. That's the old way, and it's still being done today. So we begin healing through connection and social engagement. This is the ability to connect to ourselves within, not disconnect, disengage, connect, and to others and to our environment. By actively engaging the vagal nerve, we can regulate the stress induced by hormones, such as adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones are responsible for our self-preservation modes of fight or flight. Through somatic experiences, we can create new patterns. thus override the stress hormone and replace it with the feel-good hormone, endorphin and dopamine. Science behind trauma. Can trauma haunt the body the same way it haunts the memories? Absolutely. According to Stephan Porges, PhD, not only does the body remember a traumatic experience, it can actually get stuck in the trauma response mode. So now we're going to get into some more good science. And this is the same for the horse, you guys. This is what we call PTSD and triggers. And unfortunately, you all think PTSD is it is really heavy, but you think that, oh, well, PTSD, my horse doesn't have PTSD. That's for really traumatic. Are you kidding me? Every time your horse goes into one of its self-preservation modes, every time your horse goes into fight, flight, or freeze, that's a trigger. And a trigger is a memory, both mental, the way they feel somatically, internally, and through their body, physical, on a deep cellular level. How many of our horses are triggered constantly? Constantly. And as a specialist in this field with horses, I still have my older horses having some residual triggers from the horrible way they were handled before I got them. Stuff that's so deep, deeply ingrained, and so just created so much fear in them. I'll never be able to get rid of it. Do we talk about it? Yes. Am I safe? Absolutely. Never makes me unsafe. Not anymore. Because of the way we work and develop together. So unfortunately, there's two major points, and they're sad about training today. They're still sad. There's too much of this bullshit about desensitizing your horse to areas, things, reasons why they're scared. It's a ridiculous way to approach it. When you're flooding them, the level of desensitizing, like throwing the saddle on the horse until they buck it out, let them run it out. It's horrible, absolutely horrible. Or like one of my clients has a yearling wild horse, and she's been told by your typical trainers who are very well thought of and sought out, have great reputations, and they were told, oh, they're good with horses, they're great with horses, they love horses, they understand horses. But how about if we just run this little yearling around until we sack her out, or tie her up, hobble her, lay her down. I can have that halter on that baby in an hour. Well, I'm the one that's ended up getting, in my history of training, I'm the one that ended up getting those horses before they found me, and then sent them to these guys that did all of those things. And now they broke that horse's spirit. Or the horse comes back with even more fight and flight. So according to Dr. Porges, even when the threat is gone, the body still perceives danger, and its defenses can stay engaged. The body experiences physiological responses to trauma. This is when the nervous system makes decisions for us. When we recognize how the body reacts to fear, we can begin to identify triggers. So when the body starts to automatically react, there are triggers. The horse isn't thinking. Again, see how important it is to develop that cognitive. But even more importantly, it comes down to the horse trusting you. And trust comes through those deep layers of connection, social engagement, relationship, rapport, and bonding. So, polyvagal theory. Polyvagal, poly meaning many, vagal meaning wandering, is a collection of evolutionary, neuroscientific, and psychological claims pertaining to the role of the vagus nerve in emotion, regulation, social connection, and fear response. You see how we're connecting the dots here. The Polyvagal Theory was started by Dr. Porges. He is a leading expert in developmental psychophysiology and developmental behavioral neuroscience. His research has led him to the understanding and teachings of the neurophysiological foundations. Neuro meaning the brain, neurochemistry, physiological and how it affects your body, foundations of emotions, attachment, communication, and self-regulation. Dr. Porges is the mind behind the groundbreaking Polyvagal Theory, which has startling implications for the treatment of anxiety, depression, trauma, and autism. Adopted by clinicians around the world, the Polyvagal Theory has provided exciting new insights into the way our autonomic nervous system unconsciously mediates social engagement, trust, and intimacy. Research by Dr. Porges offers an advanced understanding of the autonomic nervous system, especially as related to trauma and PTSD. The autonomic nervous system is regulated by the vagus nerve, or the 10th cranial nerve. The vagus nerve connects the brain to major systems in the body, supporting mind-body communication, how our mind and body communicate. Basically, the Polyvagal Theory is a means for us to gather information about ourselves and horses, about how we find safety, find connection with others, what self-preservation modes we choose, and how we survive. To summarize, the vagus nerve is responsible for the following: how we self-regulate our emotions or not, how we learn to connect emotionally, engage, and trust those experiences. In the end, horses, like humans, need social engagement. This level of connection allows us to feel important, to feel understood, to feel like we belong, to give us well-being and ease. Understanding this is a complete game changer in horsemanship and horse training. For me, this represents a totally different perspective and practice to developing and working with horses, traditionally called training. Now think about how simple yet complicated this theory is, and how to apply what you've learned to your horsemanship, to your training. Do you know how? Would you even know how to begin? Before I take more questions, I'm going to tell you how. And we will provide this information in our description with links. I've spent my life developing what I have, both my Discover the Spirituality of Horsemanship and Become One with Your Horse in Mind, Movement, and Relationship, and in my Mastery Membership Program, which is a riding foundation program. All of my work with students and horses begins with discovering the spirituality. It begins with you. It begins with understanding what I just talked about, not on a scientific level, but in a practical level, in a way that is tangibly applied. So we don't just talk about this in the lessons. We talk about it so we can understand it. We can wrap our brains around the theory, the concepts, the building blocks. And then we go and take what we're learning about ourselves and our horses during this process, and we take it into the work. Everything's about the work, though. Everything you're doing is working. But the actual hands-on, tactile, kinesthetic exercises that develop you and your horse as one in mind, movement, and relationship. So what do I mean by mind, movement, and relationship? So sometimes my students in my programs are on these podcasts. How would you like your horse to be able to read your mind? How would you like to be able to read your horse's mind? How would you like to be able to communicate with your horse? How would you like to be able to ground and center yourself and have your horse lie down every time? How would you like to feel completely safe with your horse in everything you do, from ground training to going to new places, to trail riding, to finessing and refining your arena? Because everything I teach has a foundation in classical dressage with a twist in reining. How would you like that? What do I mean by movement? How would you like to learn biomechanics of movement? How would you like to learn how to develop your horse's self-carriage and to develop the movement of that gait or transition in that gait before you ride it, so that when you do learn to ride it, your horse is already strong and balanced mentally and physically. All you got to do is now learn that movement. Toughest part is developing our horses. Most of the time, no one ever teaches you guys that. You take lessons on these poor horses that don't have strength or balance. They don't have self-carriage. They're not collected. The movement is hard for you and doubly hard for them because they don't know how to move correctly, and now you can't ride that movement. And during this whole process of developing together, you're always working on the relationship. You're always working on getting to know each other and developing that foundation of trust and ease, connection, communication, so that you just think it, embody it, and you ride it. I often bring this up in podcasts, but I don't often get comments on my YouTube channel. But I did get one recently with my video with the Zor, how to stop the bolting horse. And this guy, it's a healthy discussion. And so I left it up there because it always allows me, I feel, in these discussions, if they're healthy, people aren't attacking me, I'll remove you or I'll go there. But this guy was just like, I don't understand how you can do this video from the ground to riding and not wear a helmet. Aren't you supposed to be about safety? Basically is what he was writing. And I stopped commenting because he just doesn't get it. You just don't get it. It's like what I'm talking about today, what I teach in my online courses is all about all of this. It covers everything. It's my life's work. It covers everything. It doesn't just cover the relationship. It doesn't just cover trust. It doesn't just cover the riding. It covers everything. With the two most important aspects being cognitive and relationship. You got to have both with your horse to really be safe and to develop this amazing level of connection and communication, ability to talk to each other, communicate, read each other's thoughts all the time. So the Discovering the Spirituality of Horsemanship course that I offer, which is also included in the Mastery membership, which is the big one, it is the glue. And that is what separates me from everybody else, because I focus on teaching you how to develop, how to work with your horse, how to learn your horse. And we operate, for the lack of a better word, on a level that begins with grounding, the first chakra. I teach about the first 4 chakras in my work and how important energy is and how important it is for your horse to feel that grounded, centered energy from you to allow them to self-regulate. Because even though the science isn't talking about chakras, I know that chakras, they're energy. And the science does talk about the energy of the nervous system. And the more we get psychiatrists involved and neuroscientists involved with the brain activity, in with a lot of this research and data, the easier it gets for me to explain what comes so intuitively for me. What you guys get in my work, it's all provided in the lessons. How you learn to have this way with your horse is just amazing. Do we have any questions?
One, Jamie, can you give some examples of overriding their stress hormone?
So Jamie's question is, can I give examples of overriding the horse's stress hormone? Not quite sure I understand what she means by overriding the stress hormone. So can you ask Jamie to be a little bit, you guys, I'd rather you write more than less, because you don't always ask the question. I don't always get it. So what do you mean by overriding? Like, do you mean, how do I, when a horse goes into fight or flight, how do I change that and redirect it? Is that what you mean, Jamie, by overriding? It's a great question. Just I need a little bit more information from you so that I understand it correctly, what your question is. I'll keep talking about that though until hopefully Jamie can get a little more descriptive. So when a horse goes into fight or flight, one of their or freeze, one of their self-preservation modes, how do you change that? I'm going to say that Jamie's overriding meant, how do you change it?
I got her answer.
What's her answer?
When you were talking about overriding their stress with positive action,
Mm-hmm.
Yes, redo.
Okay. So, yep, gotcha. Thank you, Jamie, so much. So basically, when a horse goes into self-preservation mode, like I said, it doesn't matter if it's fight, flight, or freeze mode. First, you have to be able to identify it. Some of them are obvious, right? The fight and the flight. Freeze, most people don't get. Most people think because their horse is quiet, calm, easy, that's what they are. And I'm here to tell you, 99% of those horses are completely shut down. And even if they haven't had any real training, they're overfaced, meaning they're overwhelmed by what you're presenting them. So there's not one answer to changing that response mode, because you have to look, often you have to take in consideration not just the actions of the horse, but the big picture. Sometimes just removing the horse from that environment changes their response mode. Sometimes stopping what you're doing changes the response mode. The third would be obviously doing something different, but you have to know what you need to do differently to change the fight, flight, or freeze. The biggest complexity of that question and answer isn't always really doing something. Often it's you learning how to be in the space of that horse while they are responding X, Y, and Z, in, as I always call it, holding the space for them, offering the space for them. An example would be, I don't train horses anymore, but an example would be one of the many horses I've had that comes to me. And we start out in the round pen, so I can get to know them, assess them, and there's specific exercises, emotional agility. But often the horses are so blown in the round pen before they come to me, meaning the minute they go in, they're made to run, that the minute they come in the round pen, they start running. So my first response would be to take the path of least resistance and back up, this is an example, to the round pen panel and ground. or stand in the middle if I felt safe. Either one, if I feel safe, and just ground. Or leave. If that doesn't help, leave the round pen and stand on the outside. Basically, I'm not doing anything but offering a very low heart rate, relaxation. I'm not focused on them. I know what they're doing. I'm focused on me as a leader, giving them a level of safety and comfort. That's my first choice always when I see high response. Let's just say flight right now. If that doesn't work, I'll go in at some point and see if I can't interrupt that and stop it. And then hold the space for some connection, meaning I'm still going to go back to my grounding. This is what I teach in my work, and offer that space to them to get in with my regulation, my heart rhythm. This is part of heart math. This stuff is beautiful and complicated, and to relax, get into that relaxed mode. I might do this for many sessions so that the horse doesn't keep anticipating that every time we come into the round pen, it's going to be the way it used to be. That isn't the only way though. But that's the first thing I'm going to choose, as I call it, the path of least resistance. What can I do? What little can I do to change this and not add negatively to it? Now, if you have a horse that's in the freeze mode, completely shut down, that's okay too. If they will allow me to get close enough to them, I will try and ground with them, touching them. If not, and that's where this whole somatic experience and healing comes in. If they won't allow me to touch them through my grounding exercise, then I'll still hold that, try and do it apart from them and hold that space. So I hope that helps, Jamie, with, you know, when you have a horse in high self-preservation response mode, we're often taught to always to do something about it. Oh, I don't like that behavior. You know, you're really punishing the horse, you know, run them into the ground if they want to run until they're exhausted, or the horse that won't move, make them go. And what this is great. I'm so glad, Jamie, you asked that, because it allows me to really come full circle back with what this podcast is really about, is taking a different approach, a completely different perspective, an approach to getting to know the horse and getting to learn how to work with that horse, and in a way that doesn't keep making the horse feel unsafe, in a way that doesn't keep triggering the horse. So often we're so linear, and we're taught linear. Just go at it, go at it, go at it. He's afraid of the bag. Well, give him the bag, give him the bag, give him the bag. And it's not about the bag. A few of my students are learning that in my mastery membership with some of their challenging horses. Horses that have triggers, that have negative experiences. This 1-year-old Mustang filly is one of them. And it's not about that you can't get the halter on. And what's your rush anyway? There's no rush. It's really about how safe and comfortable you and this horse can feel in each other's company, first and foremost. And when you both feel really safe and comfortable, everything else will be easier. And for me, it's so much of the root chakra work. It's so much of the grounding and the centering and being present and learning how to attune and tune in with your horse, and learning how to tune into the somatic experience, which your horse is always feeling. Somatic is through your senses. How do you feel in your body? And honoring that, respecting how you feel in your body, not pushing past it. Yes, ma'am.
Some of them lost the video.
Oh, some lost the video.
Becky lost the video.
Oh,
My.
all right. Well, I still see us.
Okay. I can't. I haven't seen us the whole time.
Aw.
Yeah. So okay. All right. Maybe it's just unknown.
Well, remember too, guys, this is a podcast.
Yes.
It is audio recorded and uploaded to the podcast apps, Everything Horses and More, so you can listen to us. And then the actual video, you know, we're streaming through Zoom onto Facebook so that people, so it's more engaging. You know, it's just that way we can be, thank you, Jamie, I'm glad that helps. We can be, oh, and you still have the video. Yeah, just some, I think it's because Zoom is just so busy right now, you guys, with kids back in school.
I mean, kids are cool.
You started, real quick, thanks, Linda, you can see us. You started last week to experience not seeing a video, but last week the teachers were probably all on trying to make sure that everything was going to be working correctly. So we got audio, and then whatever video we've got will go to the YouTube channel.
And of course, satellite ain't the greatest either.
Well, yeah, but knock on wood, the satellite, we can't blame that, girl. We've been okay with, we've been okay with the satellite. But yeah, we will be keeping each week's podcast on the Facebook page until the next week. Yeah, until the next one comes. And then next week we'll have 3, so they'll stay up all week until, you know, Monday through Monday, basically.
Okay, I'll delete all of them. I'm kind of scared too. It's like,
well, yeah, not until they're up on YouTube, girl, you know.
Oh
And you don't have to. We just had so many, Sabrina. I think we had 20 some. I mean, if we end up just having 2 weeks, that's fine. But that was just, you know, plugging up our data and our satellite. I couldn't even load my Facebook pages for weeks until I figured that out. I'm like, oh, hello, it's because of data. All right, guys, this was an hour and a half. We are going to continue to talk about this into next week's podcast. And if anybody has any questions, we're always taking Q&A. I'd love to expand on this and next week. And then I'll be offering links to the 2 courses, or the 1 course and the 1 program that I offer that can teach you guys all about this way of being. And real quick, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a specialist in both trauma and foundation. So for people and horses, and the same thing your horses are learning, especially all of my exercises, both ground and riding, are all rhythmic, and rhythm by nature, the science behind rhythm is it's meditative by nature. So there's this really powerful how this all comes together and works. Thank you so much, you guys. May you always be one with your horse. God bless you. Stay safe. And we will see you guys Monday.
Yes.
Monday. Thank you. And keep spreading the word. Help us with the revolution. Help us. And again, put a question up there. We can expand on anything next week. We're always open.
Yeah.
We're here to serve.
Since we're going to continue on this subject Monday, correct?
Yep.
Think of questions.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, I am answering emails personally, Claudia, and Sabrina is too. So you can do Sabrina or Caroline at dialhorsemanship.com. So yeah, I still have time to answer emails. Not today, but I mean, we're getting busy. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah. You're welcome. All right. Got a couple of our students on here. This is great. I did tell them today, the Mastery Membership students, to peek in. So I think this is going to be really good for Friday's private webinar. All right. Love y'all. Take care. And I'm going to end. Bye-bye.